welcome back to the channel for some more Ice Chapter reviews. And before I start the video, I just want to say huge thanks for 3,000 subscribers. We hit this milestone over the weekend on the 28th, and I just want to say I'm super grateful for your continued support, and once again, huge thanks. But anyways, we are reviewing episode 21, The Traveler's Tree of season 11. Cole has this super weird dream in which the other ninja force him to get on this vehicle that's about to fall off a cliff just to get the Traveler's Tea. Meanwhile, Nia is still training with Misaki 2.0 and actually manages to control ice for a little bit. Cole is feeling sensitive about losing the Traveler's Tea and talks to this exposition kid who basically tells him that the Traveler's Tree is a thing where he can easily find his way back home to Ninjago. This is plot convenience, basically. Cole begins to climb the mountain and encounters these two guys, Utag and Boma, who are basically comic relief characters, and they warn Cole of the mysterious Yeti who is on the mountain. So anyways, Cole gets to the top when he is attacked by Crag, and the other ninja can hear Crag's wails from all the way down the village. Cole really hasn't done much in this season, and it's a huge downgrade from March of the Only One. I feel like he was really good in that season. Basically, in this season, Cole just sits around and is acting like an idiot, really. I mean, he just doesn't seem like himself. And this does somewhat change in this episode. Credit where credit is due and all, and I do want to applaud the writers for giving Cole something to do, and just adding something, some form of meaning to his character. He's just felt really boring this season, and I feel like this story, although not perfect, it is rather childish like a lot of the other stories in season 11. This does add something to his character, and that's something that was sorely missing throughout the rest of the season. As for Nia being able to control ice, it is a interesting storyline, and I can't wait to see where this leads. I feel like the idea for this is definitely really cool, but I do have some concerns for that, and I guess we'll talk more about that in the con section. Now, as for Utag and Boma, these guys are basically these two Neverrealm people, and they basically serve as comic relief in the episode. I feel like for the most part, these guys actually are pretty funny and do add some emotion, some form of humor to the episode. And that's something that season 11 really hasn't been good with, in my opinion. I don't think the humor in the season has been strong, but I do think that these guys are kind of funny as characters, and they did add something to this episode. I do feel like animation was one of the episode's strong points, and I specifically want to talk about the scene where Cole uses his Earth Punch in order to break their fall. The lighting was just really cool with Cole's Earth Punch and the ripple that went through the rock, and I feel like that was a nice looking scene. I also like the scenes where Cole was being followed by Crag. That definitely did have this creepy feeling to it, basically where it would show Cole and then Crag kind of coming into the foreground, and I thought that was just done pretty well for the episode. The opening scene of the episode was not very good. First off, it is an edited version of episode 16's intro, and I just don't really like the scene at all. I mean, it just isn't a strong way to start off Cole's arc with this idea of the world being against him for losing the Traveler's Tea, when that really isn't indicated at all, and I just don't feel like this was a strong start. Now, you also have Jay's line of, "If you don't get the tea, you're not our friend," which is honestly one of the worst lines of the TV series yet. This line just felt so childish and didn't really need to be in there at all. I mean, are you trying to portray Cole as a little kid in kindergarten who needs to work out his disagreements or something? I don't know, this just didn't really work at all, this specific line. But anyways, this scene just doesn't work because it makes Cole seem like, again, a little kid, rather than the complex person with deep feelings that is shown in season 8. And it just completely contradicts that. Now, talking about Nia, I feel like, again, her learning to use ice as a one-time thing for this season is a really cool story, but I just don't like Sorla's involvement in it at all. Part of the problem is that the season is repeating so many storylines. You have this idea of power coming from within, and this whole go-with-the-flow thing again. And so Sorla is basically emphasizing that to the viewer, and it's just so repetitive. It's so boring at this point. We've already learned this, the characters have learned this, the viewers have learned this, and I find myself wondering, why are they repeating these storylines? And then you have Sorla, who basically exists just to reinforce those messages. Her character really should have had something more. I mean, she's kind of this leader figure to the people of Great Lake, but rather she is basically just Misaki 2.0 and exists just to move along the story for Nia. Now, also you have Crag, and nothing much to say for Crag for this episode. He just appears at the end, but his voice acting is just really weird. I mean, if you're trying to make it scary, I feel like this just didn't really cut it, and I guess we'll have to talk more about that in the episode 22 review. Also, Utag and Boma are nice for the first few minutes, but they get pretty annoying quickly. But the biggest problem of this episode is the Traveler's Tree itself. And I think the concept is cool and stuff. This tree that basically Traveler's Tea grows on is on top of this mountain and stuff, and you gotta get there by climbing up this mountain and facing this Yeti and stuff. That's cool and all, but why is the Traveler's Tree just being introduced now? And also, it's the way that it's introduced that just really bothers me. They basically use a little kid to tell Cole, and they use him as exposition basically to tell Cole that this exists. And I feel like this was just a pretty lazy way to get out of this conflict by just writing in the Traveler's Tree, and I'm just not impressed with that. So the episode's biggest issues do lie in plot, and I think that definitely was because of the Traveler's Tree. It's basically just being introduced now. It seems really forced, and so it looks to be plot convenience, basically. Some sort of backstory should have been given to this, like maybe the first Fujitsu Master planted it in order to escape the Neverrealm, and it should have been introduced in the very first episode of the Ice chapter, rather than just introducing this now. And I feel like this was a pretty boring conclusion to this conflict that the ninja had with getting home and stuff. Characters, Cole was pretty entertaining in this episode. I'm glad that they added some form of meaning to a otherwise meaningless character, or rather boring character that he had been in the Fire chapter. So I'm pretty happy that they did do that. Now as for Sorla, she's sadly not any better as a character, and I don't think she will be given the Ice chapter finale descriptions and stuff, so I just don't really think that there's much more to do with her character, and I had hoped that they would have done something different with her by this point, but it just seems like she exists just to move along Nia's story. Not too much action in this episode, but that's okay. You don't always need to load an episode up with action. I was happy with Crag charging towards Cole at the end of the episode, and also Cole with his Earth Punch saving Uthag and Boma, so that was fine and all. As for emotion, Uthag and Boma were pretty funny at first, I gotta admit. They did get, again, pretty annoying quickly, though. And then you also have Cole's sensitivity dream, and I don't really feel like this added anything to his character. If anything, it just made him seem more like a little kid rather than a complex person. So my final score for this episode is a 6.5 out of 10. It really could have been better, and I feel like there definitely were a lot of things that weighed down this episode. Luckily, episode 22 will be better, and I am glad that this did do something for Cole, who had been pretty boring up until now, but I do feel like this episode had a lot of flaws and could have done some stuff better. Thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share with anyone ever you know. Let me know your thoughts on episode 21, The Traveler's Tree, and I will see you next time.